different. I'm gonna go into Justice League, and I know everyone's been chomping it, salivating.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, very excited.
Forget y'all. I'm excited. Y'all ain't. I have loyalty to DC
You
to a
sure
degree.
do.
All right, the Thriller Priest JM is
Oscar!
said he'll be there.
Oscar got an Oscar.
Said he'll be there week 3.
Yeah, for real. See, my money's in my savings and when my checking account works.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about Justice League, the latest from DC Films. DC trying to match Marvel's success in the with their own cinematic universe, and unfortunately, I'm just going to come right out and say this one was not the hit that they hoped it
Not
would
the
be.
one.
Now, mind you, this was a production that was played with, I'll say pretty much tragedy. It started off being directed by Zack Snyder, who unfortunately had some familial hardship and had to drop out of the project midway through production. And it was taken over by a friend of Snyder, Joss Whedon, who has had a lot of success
With
working
Marvel,
with Marvel. Yeah, so fans had high hopes for this one. And
yeah, that's the ultimate guy you want to hand it off to, that you think like, well, at least it's in good hands now. You know what I mean?
thought
like,
so. Either Joss Whedon or Christopher Nolan would be the top two names to go to.
Which is, you can rule out Nolan right away, but that would have been.
Well, you can rule out Nolan, but that's because they already burned him out years ago. That's unfortunate. And if it wasn't Joss Whedon, the only other name I could think of that would have had a shred of saving this would have been Edgar Wright.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Michael Bay.
Might as well be. I think the whole DC thing is just a giant Michael Bay production.
You know what's sad though?
It would sell, fam. It would sell.
It would sell so hard if it was Justice League.
Just be more naked girls and just bending over a car for some reason. Like cars underwater with Aquaman.
Man, you know what? Here's what's ironic too. One of the biggest complaints about this online was the sexualization of the Amazons after being presented as in the earlier successful movie from earlier this year, Wonder Woman.
And one of the actresses came out says, I'd never felt more empowered to be dressed like that and doing this.
Which is very surprising.
It's funny, they come out there like...
in society, and then she came out and said the Amazon society wasn't sexualized or overly sexualized. They were actually presented as competent,
because we know women. How those internet commenters are about protecting women's rights and their
well, there was enough negative aspects everywhere else for that not to be the front runner, which was very surprising because the Amazons did have a presence in this. But you would think Zack Snyder would be the one to completely be lambasted for sexualizing the Amazons, but Michael Bay might be the only person in working in cinema right now to take that crown and be like, no, Zack Snyder, let me show you how to really how to really sexualize
a woman, skimp it up a little bit.
Yeah. Explosions and ladies. That's money. That makes money.
Yeah, but I will say, for as much as they tried once Zack Snyder left this project to do more with the story, it still would have benefited from a Michael Bay-like influence in the fight scenes because they tried to focus on the story in a really ham-fisted attempt at working a more more lighthearted than we got in Batman vs Superman, the direct predecessor to this picture,
right?
Which was criticized for being very dark,
well,
very
a lot
morose.
Of these DC movies, I think the biggest, the difference, my big one between DC and Marvel is obviously the casting, which I've talked about that, but another one is just like how just heavy it is, and just seeing how it's just so morose and dark and like upsetting. It's like there's still comic book things. We're looking for escapism. We're looking to enjoy these things and be like, well, everyone's dying.
But at the same time, that's kind of the nature of DC, though. DC's typically darker.
They can do it, but like it seems like every project is still harping that same kind of that.
Well, unfortunately,
I know you're attached, my friend. I know you're attached.
No, unfortunately, that's reactionary. Keep in mind, if you just look at comics history real quick, I'm just going to take a quick sidebar. If you look at comics history, DC's always been the lighter company to Marvel's heavier company.
Right, Daredevil's not necessarily the happiest of comic books.
No, it's not. But when Marvel in the 90s especially was more about X-Men and X-Men related titles, and
Spider-Man as well.
Yeah, and those were about those were allegories even for civil rights issues and members of society not being accepted and forming their own underground factions and then planning rebellions and planning revenge. That was really popular. That was really huge, and that dark era of Marvel sold like gangbusters for them, whereas DC was the opposite. and DC eventually was criticized for being unnaturally happy, unnaturally hopeful.
It's not an Archie
Superman's
comic.
always going to win.
Yeah.
Batman's always going to catch the Joker. That was really frowned upon because it seemed unrealistic at a time when Marvel books were approaching more hard-hitting issues. The Punisher's taking down serial killers. X-Men are facing discrimination even though they're doing good things in society. Those were more realistic. So DC really went left field in trying to overcompensate for that. And that's when you get storylines of Aquaman loses his hand on panel, and then he becomes this really dark, angry figure. Batman goes really deep into his war on crime, and then that consistently gets worse with them destroying half of the country with earthquakes and stuff in No Man's Land.
Yeah.
And they went really deep into it, and then they just kind of carried over with that. Whereas Marvel learned their lesson with the changing times. We have to focus more on stories about like Captain America, make that deal with more relevant world issues. Captain America dealing with situations in Afghanistan.
Yep.
We're dealing with domestic terrorism here, and how they can focus on rebuilding the spirit of the people they protect. Whereas DC was like, okay, now one of Batman's methods of maintaining a totalitarian control has taken over society, and now people are getting killed by being turned into. It's kind of like the Matrix, and wherever everyone and the Matrix Reloaded, everyone was turning into Dr. Smiths.
Yep.
Everywhere, it was along the same lines as that. Even you're a regular citizen, but you're at risk of becoming a supervillain, criminal, robot thing.
To kill everybody before they can do that.
And that's carried on, and they never learned from it. They never really recovered. That to this day is still DC, and it's bleeding over into the movies where they're trying to compete with Marvel, and Marvel has had tremendous success. Like record-breaking, like 4-2 scene. Is that the right?
No, but
never before seen success in cinema with their universe, and they've learned from their mistakes.
Yeah, and it's kind of
Iron Man 2 didn't do well. Iron Man 3 picked up on that, and the other movies learned from, okay, let's not do that. Where DC is like, okay, we did this, it failed, let's do it harder next time.
But I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate on this one. I mean, mind you, we're only what's this, the 5th movie in?
This is the priest praying devil's advocate.
Of course.
Yeah,
gotta look at it from all sides.
They are 5 movies in,
so
and that's no excuse because it's not the 5th of all time DC movie.
Of this universe, it is. You can't connect it to
the problem. That one word is the problem. Universe. When we had the Tim Burton Batman movie in 1989. That was one movie. It stood on its own 2 feet. It was to succeed or fail under its own accord.
Right. Yep.
So then when they did another Superman movie, or they tried to do a Wonder Woman movie or anything like that, it would have been its own picture to succeed or fail.
Yes.
The fact that they're trying to link all these means that if one movie fails, another movie, it can't stand on its own 2 feet. It has to either make up for the failure or measure up to the success. And where Marvel took that plunge, and Marvel has lucked into it, because I mean that is an easy thing to fail at. Marvel's been lucky, in my opinion, because they've learned from mistakes, and they have had missteps, and they've learned from them and continued to do good because they're lucky and they're aware. DC is just like I said, okay, this failed, but we've committed to it.
Yeah,
so
it looks like they're just trying to play catch up. You know what I mean? They're
saying, I agree.
You know what they're doing across the pond, and they're like, we need to do something to compete with that, but they're doing everything almost everything the same, just a little bit worse.
Yes, I agree.
You know what I mean?
I
whether I said like it's the casting, whether it's the direction, because Marvel's had so much luck with just the actors nailing the roles, the directors all of a sudden coming into their own, like the Russo brothers. You know what I mean? Who saw that? Things like that. So I think they're trying to get the big names and the big people over in DC, and it's just like, I don't know, if like, can you buy into Ben Affleck? Can you buy into,
in the foot? Now,
Gal Gadot is the exception. I think she's great.
I agree.
She's been doing a really good job as Wonder Woman, and there's been a lot of backlash about the quote-unquote sexualization of Wonder Woman specifically in this picture, but I haven't seen that. There was sexualization of the Amazons, where they were proud figures in legitimate armor and decent fight scenes and ability in the Wonder Woman standalone solo movie, but in this picture, Wonder Woman herself was pretty badass.
Well, didn't
the Amazons, they changed the armor and they changed the design. They still had a pretty well designed and well executed warrior society. But for some reason, they decided to change the costumes to make it more, hey, we're showing more midriff here, we're showing more leg here. And that part seemed unnecessary because everything else about them screamed they are warriors, they are protected. I mean, even there's a huge fight scene with the Amazons, and that would have fit. Not necessarily in the main story, but if they did a side thing from the Wonder Woman picture, that would have fit right in line with it had they not changed the costumes. Yeah. What this movie is actually about is taking directly from Batman vs. Superman, where Batman feels extreme guilt for essentially being responsible for the death of Superman towards the end of that. Spoiler if you haven't seen Batman vs. Superman, but it's been a while. And we're dealing with his internal issues. Meanwhile, there's an oncoming threat.
Batman has internal issues?
No, I know, hard to believe, right? But we're dealing with an oncoming threat that's presented itself because there were a lot of notes that were adopted from Lex Luthor in Batman vs. Superman that never really made sense in that picture. They make sense in this picture. So if you saw one directly after the other, that would actually be coherent. Nice. At the time in the movie, it wasn't. This movie has done a lot to make it relevant and make it understandable now. Lex Luthor was collecting information on the mother boxes because the mother boxes, if anyone doesn't know, the mother box is I guess a power beacon that allows people to activate boom tubes. Boom tubes are the direct transport between Earth and New Genesis or Earth and Apocalypse, which it's a little more involved to explain where those are. Let's just say they're other planets / other dimensions where really powerful beings live. One of those has a mat-on for the mother boxes, so he comes to Earth because he wants to collect them to enact his own agenda. And I'll leave it there because the rest gets really complex and really convoluted. But to stop this threat being a dude by the name of Steppenwolf, who, in the comics, he's one of Darkseid's underbosses, and one of his, I think he's his stepson. Or like son once removed. Darkseid has all types of bastard children everywhere that he's negated or that he's disowned or done some messed up stuff with. A lot like Zeus.
Yep.
So Steppenwolf comes to Earth and he's wreaking havoc. He's here to collect the mother boxes by any means necessary, and this goes into killing God knows how many people, going through warrior societies. He's not worried about heroes. He just needs the mother boxes, and when the heroes step in his way, that's when he gets involved in the fight himself. It does a very poor job of describing who he is. The information I just gave you, part of that came from knowledge from the comics. It kind of glosses over who he is, just says he's here, here's where he's from, and this is what he aims to do. And I feel there was information that was cut out from this final edit of the movie that would have made it make more sense. It probably would have added to the runtime too, which is probably why it was removed. And I feel that detrimented the movie in the long run. I will say, though, that if you're a comic fan, if you are a DC fan, there are a lot of glossed over scenes that are just kind of told over soliloquies that will make you happy. They described how the mother boxes, not how they got to Earth, but how they were, distributed between societies in the ancient times and why it becomes a chore to find them in the modern age. And that part was kind of cool because they showed how the Atlanteans fit in to our history and why they matter now, which gives explanation, which gives credence to why Aquaman is showing himself for the first time.
How is the new additions in terms of the new characters? How was Aquaman? How was Flash? How did the actors do?
Cyborg, right?
Yes, and Cyborg. It was really quick. And I have my own beef with it being a comic fan, especially being a DC fan, because each of these characters, I think, deserved more, at least a couple minutes more screen time, but also more merit in the presentation of their stories. Each one has a deep background.
A better introduction? How were they introduced, too? Was it like...
They were introduced as Batman has all these files, so he knows everything he needs to know about these people, so he just shows up. That I was against between movies, but I think seeing how it played out in the movie, I think was necessary, because they could have spent forever getting to the point. Well, they could have spent forever getting to the point, but they wanted to make sure that, unlike in Batman and Superman, you finally get to see these characters in action. If I'm in an Aquaman movie, I don't want to wait 45 minutes before he at least takes a swim, you know?
But I always like the round up the new guys, like you're assembling the team part. I always like that. They show up like Armageddon, like, you know what I mean? They're trying to get everybody.
The problem with that is the presentation's all like Magnificent Seven, where you get these guys and you hear about what they can do, but you never really see it. In this one, you see Batman in action for a bit, and then you see he has a larger plan. So that's very Batman-like, which was good. You see Wonder Woman, and she's right into it. Like the first time you see Wonder Woman, it's not even like alter ego. It's not even like a conversation. It's just some stuff's going down, and bam, Wonder Woman's in it. And that was like the first 3 minutes of the movie, which was great. So it got right to it. It didn't make you wait for the action, but you can definitely see the lull between the Zack Snyder stuff and the Joss Whedon stuff.
Really?
And
is it noticeable?
It's noticeable, but you almost want more Zack Snyder stuff because the Joss Whedon stuff is good, but you can tell that's where the studio interference came in because it's good, but you can tell, but like another 30 seconds here would have been great. And Joss Whedon's the type to leave that in, and finding out afterwards, a lot of the final calls on what to cut out, what to change, what to reshoot, where to inject CG came from the WB CEO, this dude named Kevin Sugihara, and like he made these calls before the movie came out. Like I think before or when they just started production, like I'm putting a hard stop on the time limit. I'm making sure this fits in here and that goes here, and those are side steps to work around Zack Snyder's foibles. But I think once Joss Whedon came in, they should have been some input from Jeff Johns. And I forget the other dude running DC Films, but Jeff Johns should have been able to say, no, this guy works differently. Let's let him work his way. Because the movie would have been slightly longer, but I think it would have been more coherent and would have been more worthwhile. I've got to give this a thumbs down, which is very unfortunate. I definitely have to call out the acting on the part of the individual Justice League members was good. And you really like, dang it, what's his name? Khal Drogo. Aquaman. The actor that played him, I forget his name.
Jason Momoa.
Jason Momoa as Aquaman. I really like him. You really like him. He's a lot like Thor. He's more like
he's got the big.
I mean, just chisel, cut, diesel, attractive guy. Absolutely.
One of my favorite memes going around online is how can people look at pictures of Jason Momoa standing half in the water, got the tattoos on, just this dude impossibly cut, cartoonish physique, got the hair going and everything, and say that
Blake Shelton's still the most attractive man in the world. Sexiest man alive. I saw that meme.
That was. I looked at that and I was just like. For a split second, I'm watching this one. I'm just like,
you're like,
hey, oh wait a minute, whoa.
Got a little chubby. I
don't like country music.
It was, and his performance was good. It had a good amount of comic relief, but also you know what? I don't want to do this, but I need to, so I'll join up with this team. It made sense. Cyborg, I thought they glossed over his origin, which did him a disservice because Cyborg is a complex character, and all people really know of Cyborg.
Yeah, I'm not really
from now on
well versed in.
Exactly. If you've seen maybe the Teen Titans Go cartoon show, that's all the origin people have gotten. So it deserved a little more because the actor did a great job. Maybe not so much in the dramatic scenes. Joe Morton is in this.
Okay.
Joe Morton plays Victor Stone. Not Victor Stone. Professor Stone. Data Stone. His father. And Joe Morton, if anyone doesn't know, Miles Dyson. Brother from another planet. He's an actor. He's very prestigious.
That's a good reference. I was going to go Terminator 2.
Terminator.
Dude who kept the hand.
Yeah, he's a great actor, and they just kind of I
didn't know he was in this.
They kind of waste him in this. They kind of waste a lot of talent that they had, and the CG is less egregious in the fight scenes, more egregious in the obvious reshoots where they have images of Superman when he just comes back to life. Before he comes back to life, when they see him, that's not a spoiler. He's in the trailers, but they have a lot of CG where the actor had a mustache, he had a beard, he was doing a Mission Impossible movie. At the same time, they called him back. And he couldn't shave the facial hair, so they CG'd it out, and a lot of it just looks fake.
I remember that.
Yeah, it's noticeable.
Wow. Come on,
that is the problem with DC movies.
That's just lazy.
Right,
that's the problem.
Well, I've actually gone over time now. I've mentioned a lot. I've mentioned some good. I've mentioned some bad. This one really skirted the line. I really wanted to give it a positive review, but the facts are the facts, and I couldn't, which is unfortunate because I think the actors really tried their heart. They put their hearts into this.
Even Ben Affleck, tried.
Ben Affleck, you get a lot more Ben Affleck and a much more likable Bruce Wayne in this, which is sad because he has worked his ass off. Like we've seen this
Bruce
man
Wayne
put
or
on
Ben Affleck.
both. But Bruce Wayne actually did Bruce Wayne type work in this.
Gotcha.
And we saw the outcome of it, and it was just unfortunate because the actors really tried, and it hurts to give this one a bad review, but I got to give it a thumbs down.
You all right?
You
all right?
I don't even know if I want to talk about wrestling now. Man, hey, I was hoping you gave me something to hold on to for this.
I'm gonna need everyone to like bang their chairs and rally, because the Thriller Priest is about to step in. But if you have anything to say on Justice League, hit us up at geekdownradio@gmail.com. If you're watching us on Twitch and you want to fight through those tears and hit your keyboard on twitch.tv/thegeekdown, we'd love to hear from you in the chat. And Johnny can field your hate mail and death threats. And we'll talk to you soon, hopefully. But Justice League, unfortunately, I have to give it a pass.
I'm not really surprised.
I gotta say, thumbs down.
I'm sorry.
I'm not either, man. But I mean, you hit it on the head there, Johnny. That they're really trying to play catch up. All right, let's get it.
Kick it over to JM, the Thriller Priest, for WWE.
Yes, I'll start off with NXT first. NXT's Takeover War Game.